Welcome to episode 9 of Project Versus. A quick recap of what occurred in the previous episode. I managed to win 3 matches in my tournament, which took me all the way to the final. And I met an old friend, in fact, but unfortunately I couldn't get over the finishing line. I lost in 2 tie-break sets, 4-3, 4-3. But overall, I was pretty happy with my showing. There was a big improvement on the tournament prior. I also want to touch on the budget, which is now £87.93 after I took home £50 from that tournament overall. So a little bit more room to play with, and we'll do so in this episode. Let's get to it. Okay, I'm going to start this episode off with looking at a new string, and I believe, recommended this one in the past. It is the Pacific Polypower Pro 16. That's the 1.30mm gauge. And the reason I'm having another look at this one is because I want to enhance the improvement that I felt in my serve recently. So in that tournament that I just recently played in, I finally felt, almost not ashamed of the serve. I was quite confident going for it, whether it be first or second serve. And of course there were still errors even at some important moments, but the confidence is not rock bottom anymore. I feel like I can go for it, and more often than not make the serve, keep my opponent on the back foot, and that allows me to execute my play style a lot easier. And so I want to carry on this momentum, and this is the reason I've highlighted the string. And if we pull up the stats for the Polypower Pro, I'm going to highlight the deflection first off, as this is what caught my eye originally. And a 32.9mm deflection is above average and not extreme, but we're getting there. And I feel like it's important because, as I've said, I'm trying to further enhance the slice and the swerve on my serve, and that extra deflection means I'll have extra access to snapback, so I can swing at my usual speed and gain a few more revolutions or RPMs from the string. And that's exactly really what I'm looking for, a little bit more help from the string. The stiffness is 194.9 pounds, so a little bit more than our current setup with the Polytour Rev, which is 193.2 pounds. And with that, I'd expect a little bit more length control, and that should make it easier to take the ball early, take the ball on the rise, although I'd have to take it out onto court to make sure that that is actually the case, because the increase in deflection might make that a bit more difficult to execute. But we'll see. I could be wrong in that regard. And also a few more stats from this database I want to highlight. And as we go further along the table, we have a look at the string tension maintenance, and the percentage is 43.7%, so that isn't great at all. We're going to have to expect the characteristics to change as we play more and more with this string, but it could be a good thing in the end, because that extra tension loss means it frees up the main strings to move easier on the cross strings, and of course that means we've got more access to snapback and hopefully a higher potential for spin. Moving across, we've got a energy return of 85.0%, so probably a little bit below average. We can expect a bit more control in terms of length, as the shot speed should be a little bit less. And finally, we've got the string to string friction at 0.059, which is very low, but you'd expect that as the deflection is also quite high at 32.9mm. And yeah, all in all, pretty good set of stats if I'm looking to increase the effectiveness of my slice serve. And so I'm gonna go ahead and make the purchase and string this up in my main setup, which is the PowerBridge 10. Yeah, pretty excited about this. Right, the string cost me £14, and I have strung it up in my main setup, which is the PowerBridge 10 mid. And I'm going to go out, take it onto court. We'll have a practice session, do a few drills, see how it performs. I am expecting a few things different from the previous string that we were using, such as a higher launch angle, less shot speed, more spin hopefully, but we'll see. You never know what kind of surprises these tests throw up. So let's get to it. Okay, first test with the new string, and I thought we'd start off with some backhand slices down the line, as I've needed a few options in order to target the opponent's or the right-hander's forehand, and backhand down the line is an opportunity during a lot of matches that I get to play. And so I thought, yeah, we'll take it out onto court, because if this is a shot I want to use often, then it needs to play well in regards to that shot. So yeah, I took it out onto court. It did feel pretty decent straight from the off. That soft feeling from the longer dwell time was evident from the start, and it just feels good on the slice shots. I think it's that higher dwell time that causes the higher launch angle, which feels like you don't need to exert as much effort in order to play these slice shots and like the touch shots such as drop shots and volleys. So I do enjoy playing with these sorts of strings. We've got the little heat map in the corner, so the grouping, although I don't trust the swing vision that much, to be honest, the grouping seems to be pretty close together, so I'm happy enough with the accuracy. And yeah, this is the reason I'm practicing this is because I realized even amongst high level players, or even more so amongst high level players, to be honest, their forehands seem to be less consistent than their backhands. And it's not just those with two-handers. I think even a lot of players with one-handed backhands tend to have more consistent backhands, whether it be the slice or they hit through it. And so, seeing as that's the case, I want to target the side that is less consistent if I'm given the opportunity, and I can do so in a way that doesn't put me under too much pressure. And so yes, I do realise that most players' forehands are more powerful in terms of more revolutions per minute on the ball or more shot speed. But if they're less consistent and I can play them in a way that keeps them neutral as opposed to attacking me, then I think it's definitely a wise option to have in our arsenal, and I need to be able to execute it to a good standard. So that was the first drill we started with the new string, and I was quite pleased with it. It played reasonably well and to my expectations, I thought. So let's go on to the next drill. Okay, on to the second drill, and this one involves two shots, the first being a drop shot and then a lob, as I've been getting into more situations in matches recently where I can play the drop shot, but then what comes after, I'm not 100% sure at the moment. And so that's why we are practicing this drill. And of course, the feel on my lobs were not great. They were just as bad as my drop shots were a couple months ago. And so these definitely need a lot of work, and you can tell just how inexperienced I am using the lob, and hence why we're doing this drill. I'm not sure why. It's not a shot I even think about playing a lot. I usually try to pass the player, whether it be up the line or cross-court sharp angles. I don't even go hard into the body at the player a lot of the times. Maybe that's just because I'm a bit too polite. I don't know, I don't feel comfortable doing it, and that's another option I really should try and develop. But for the time being, I'm looking to try and get this length on, the length and the height on my lobs correct. But as you can see, some of these lobs, I'm not even hitting the strings on the ball. I'm shanking lobs, can you believe? But yeah, some of them seem to be hitting the length required. As you can see, the ball basket and the cones, that is the minimum length I'm looking to hit. So obviously up towards the baseline. So that gives me about a couple meters, I'd say, margin to hit with. And I also try and switch it up as well. So if I do play a drop shot and I decide to come in and close the angle for my opponent, then I'm going to need to be able to volley lob as well. But These were just as bad. Look at them. I mean, they were like drop volleys, some of them, and landing way too short in the court. Interesting nonetheless. It's not a sequence of shots I usually play, hence why I kind of enjoyed the drill, to be honest, even if the result was not what I had in mind. But it happens. We got to start from somewhere, and when it comes to this particular sequence, I'm starting right at the bottom. So yeah, that is the drill. Plenty of room for improvement, but I will, if I get the opportunity, try it out in a match, see how it goes. The strings, I think they give me a lot more RPMs on the ball, and so I noticed a lot of my lobs were landing too short, so I've got to be, I think, a bit more aggressive. Trust that the spin will bring the ball in before the baseline, and yeah, make it very difficult for my opponent. Even if it does lob my opponent, hopefully that spin and that jump will take it away if he decides to run back, retreat, and try to retrieve the ball. But yeah, cool results, I thought. Reflecting on the training session, I thought it was a pretty positive experience overall, even though it's early days. And the string does feel quite significantly different to the Polytour Rev, so I do feel it's going to take probably a couple to maybe even 3 or 4 training sessions to fully get used to the nuances that this particular string provides. But overall, I was happy with the amount of spin I could put on the ball, the length control, and I did do a few serves as well, which I thought was not too bad. But we'll see how it performs as we go on, and we'll make a better judgment from there. And as a few days pass, I have a few more hitting sessions with a few players that they do hit hard, and so it's a good workout for me, I think. And as with most strings, I feel like the performance tends to deteriorate, but with this particular string, it's interesting because I noticed that rather than the cross strings soaring into the mains, this does the opposite. The mains actually dents into the cross strings, and so it sort of creates a valley that is difficult for the main strings to move out of, and therefore the deflection is less. And so if the deflection is less, our access to snapback is decreased, and so the potential for increased spin decreases as well, which is generally, well, I'm going to say, which is always really a bad thing for me in this scenario, because I'm relying on that additional spin to help me out in rallies, and especially on the serve. So I'm taking note of that. I'm observing it. It hasn't made too big of a difference yet. I feel like maybe the performance has deteriorated slightly, but I'm going to go into a practice match anyway and see how it plays. If it continues to go down this path, then we'll have to reevaluate, but I'm hoping that it holds up. Also, I wanted to mention that this does decrease the dwell time, which I've stated in the past increases shot speed, which is absolutely what I don't need, because I'm trying to take the ball early. That's how I'm putting pressure on my opponents. I need the opposite. In fact, I need dwell time to increase so I have less shot speed and I can step inside the court with more confidence and take that ball early with more confidence, and use all the trickery that I've got available at my disposal, whether it be short angles, drop shots, or taking the ball early, both sides, slices or drives. I need those options in order to play at my best. So yeah, bearing all of this in mind, but we'll go into the match and see how it plays. I am going to upload this practice match and the practice session we had beforehand in its entirety on this channel, so if you're interested, it might be worth checking that out. A quick player profile: we have played this opponent many times before, and he usually gets the better of me. He's about 5'10" tall, big first serve, slice second serve, which is difficult to attack, a very consistent, powerful two-handed backhand, and a heavy Western forehand, which I feel like I could get at if I'm playing at my best, but we'll see how it goes in the match. Also, a word on the conditions. It's about 11 to 12 degrees Celsius. It's sunny, very dry, obviously, and it's March at the moment, so we are moving into the spring, if not already there, and I'm expecting the ball to bounce a little bit higher as a result of the sun, and my slice to be neutralized a little bit as the dry conditions tend to slow that particular shot up. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we can adapt. Okay, on to the first set, and this ended 6-4 to my opponent. He outplayed me, really, to be honest. I thought it could have been a worse scoreline, and I'm pretty happy to come away with 4 games, as I didn't think I played up to my capability at all. But then maybe his play didn't allow me to do so, and I've got to give credit there. On both sides, even his, what I would perceive as his weaker forehand side, I couldn't break it down no matter what patterns of play I was trying to execute. And yeah, his forehand stood up, and he was using the extra bounce and a little bit of angle at the same time to take advantage of my error-prone play during the set. And yeah, he took it comfortably, I thought. So not great. A few points I wanted to touch on, and usually I go through positives and negatives, but we'll start off with the negatives this time. The slice serve wasn't great again, and I think this issue of the main strings denting into the cross strings is having a bigger effect than I previously thought. I've had this issue in the past, but it hasn't affected my strategy as much as this particular issue is. And maybe it's because in the past I've had a different play style, and so I could adapt, but this time it's not the case. I really do want to take the ball early. I really do want to step inside of the court, and I'm not being able to. And on the slice serve, when I don't have the deflection I need from the string, and combined with that, the dwell time is less as well, giving me more shot speed. I'm losing control over where I place the serve, and so I can't place the ball as consistently as I would like. And on top of that, I don't have the slice that I would like to get 3 points, or at least keep my opponent at bay on the second serves. And it's a big issue, so we need to address this, because it's causing double faults on top of that. If I don't have the spin on the ball, then I can't hit out. I can't swing as aggressively or as quick as I would like without fearing making a double fault. And once that fear creeps in, it affects my confidence, and I start to tighten up, and I slow the swing speed, and I double fault just as much, if not more. And even if the ball goes in, so what? The best I can hope for is starting off the point on neutral. At worst, it's he hits a winner off of it. And I know it's a little bit more difficult off of a slice serve to hit winners, but he's good enough to at least at a minimum put me under pressure on a medium pace second serve. So yeah, those are a couple of the negatives. A few more actually I want to touch on. Too many errors going wide, and I probably relate that to the lower dwell time, the increased shot speed again. I know that lower dwell time and less deflection combined usually increases directional control, and that is true to a certain extent, but because I'm losing length control, if I'm trying to hit angles, the ball will go wide anyway, because I can't keep it within the sidelines either way. So yeah, another issue that I did not enjoy experiencing. And I did want to touch on his play. I thought it was a pretty high level, and so he should be happy with what he's doing out on court. I did try at times to target the weaker side, but as I said, it stood up, and once he had the opportunity on his stronger side, the backhand, he took advantage of it. He was hitting deep consistently, And so I need to bear that in mind, maybe have a few practice drills dealing with shots that come deep and flat at me, and see how I can neutralize from that situation. The serve also, he got a few 3 points, I think a few aces as well, and the second serve again I couldn't attack consistently. So overall solid, and if I want to make inroads on his game, I've got to do a lot better. I've got to come with a few new strategies. But yeah, well done to him. Right, back onto my string. I've got to address this issue of the mains actually getting stuck inside of the crosses when they dent into the crosses and create a valley that is difficult for the mains to move out of. And the only way I can think of is by lubricating the strings, and I've come up with a few ways in order to do that, not just at the beginning of a match where I can silicone spray it and then it will play well for half an hour. I actually have a few plans to do so in between points and at changeovers, and I will not divulge what I'm doing on this channel. I go into a little bit of detail on my private subreddit, but I do not feel like people really are ready to hear what I do during the points. It's nothing too nefarious, at least I don't think, but it's not something I'm going to discuss on this channel. If you do want to join the private subreddit and see what I'm getting up to in a bit more depth, then of course do so. I'm happy to see you there. But yeah, I'm going to take these plans out onto court for my next match, and it is a rematch with the opponent that we played in the final of our previous tournament, the one that beat me 4-3, 4-3. So this plan has to work, otherwise I'm going to get battered because he's way too consistent. I can't go in there with a setup that gives me no spin and no length control. It's just not going to happen. I need it to work. So fingers crossed it does. Let's get to it. Quick player profile again. He's about 5'8" tall, got a reasonably paced quick serve that does kick up on the higher bouncing hard court surfaces. He's got a semi-western forehand, a two-handed backhand, and he's very solid from the back of the court, one of the most consistent baseliners I've ever played. But he's good up at the net as well, hardly ever misses a volley, hardly ever misses a smash. So a good all-courter, but he does spend most of his matches at the baseline and tends to grind down pretty much 95+% of the opponents that he plays. A word on the conditions. We are playing on an indoor hard court, but the surface is a lot smoother than the gritty hard courts that we've played a couple practice matches on recently. And temperature's about 10 degrees outdoors, so indoors is roughly about 15 to 17 degrees Celsius. I don't carry a thermometer with me, so I don't know 100% what the temperature is. I'm just going off the way that it felt. And the surface is probably, I would say, about slow to medium. So we will get a few rallies going, especially as the balls get older, they lose pressure and the conditions tend to slow up from there. It's also a lot lower bouncing than the grittier hard courts, and so that bodes well for me. I do much prefer the lower bouncing surfaces. In fact, the lower the bounce, the better. And so I'm looking forward to this. Into the first set, and this ended 6-love to myself. This is probably the best start to a competitive match or a practice match I've ever had in my life. And before the match, I did have the strings all lubricated up, and in between games and points, I made sure, to the best of my ability, that the strings stayed slippery so they didn't get stuck in the little dent that the mains has created into the crosses, and so they would easily be able to move and snap back. And the amount of spin I was getting, even from a flatter trajectory swing, was still telling. And yeah, with the quicker conditions, it was difficult to deal with for my opponent. I definitely caught him off guard. I don't think he expected me to play the way that I did. I was more consistent than I was usually, and every opportunity I took, I was putting pressure as much as I could. And in a few practice sessions recently, I've done drills where I target the right-hander's forehand. As I think I've stated in the past, I feel like despite the forehands on average, being a bigger shot in terms of revolutions per minute on the ball or shot speed, it is the side that tends to break down more often than the backhand. And that goes for players with two-handed and one-handed backhands, in my opinion, as well. So I've practiced a lot in terms of patterns of play targeting that area, and I executed. I was directing the majority of traffic towards his forehand, something that I haven't done in the past, and caught him off guard. I think he definitely did not play up to his ability, and I managed to take advantage with, I would say, decent planning in terms of the string setup and decent planning in terms of strategy. So a perfect setup, a perfect set for me, really. I'm really pleased with that. And so let's see if we can keep it up into the second set. And we'll find out how I got on in the next episode. That is it for this particular episode of Project Versus, and I want to thank everyone for watching. Again, I want to remind everyone as well, I do have a private subreddit that if you'd like to join the discussion, you can just drop your Reddit username in the comments, or if you want to email it to me at cupenyatennis@hotmail.com, I'll add you there. You won't be able to find it until I have approved you, as it is a private subreddit. So I will hopefully see everyone in future, and until then, everyone, take care.